A few months back, I showed you how to make super flat, super rigid clamping cauls using strut channels. That video has nearly 1 million views, and oh boy, did you guys have a lot to say about it. There were the typical haters, and complainers, and people who criticized my Stratocaster playing. I thought it was pretty good. But mixed in here and there were several pretty good suggestions. And so I spent weeks testing your ideas out. And in the process, came up with a few of my own. And today, I'll be showing you how to take your glue-ups to the next level with clamping cauls that are stronger, faster, more versatile, and way cheaper than anything you'll find in a store. Let's do this. Hi everybody, hola amigos, Lee here from Busted Knuckle Woodworks. My comment section. It gets pretty crazy in there. Believe it or not, the one thing nobody seemed to be able to agree on in the comments was, what do we call this thing? The generic name for this is strutchannel, but a number of companies make this, so there are brand names like superstrut, unistrut, kindorf, adamax, and others. I called it superstrut in the previous video for the same reason you call this a Kleenex and this a Band-Aid. It's just a popular brand name, but that doesn't really matter because the key thing to remember is that this stuff is standardized. So no matter what brand you use, the dimensions will be the same. This strut is 13/16, which is considered a low profile strut. And this is good for smaller projects like cutting boards and so on. For larger glue-ups like tabletops, there's the standard strut, which has a 1 5/8 inch sidewall. That makes it more than twice as strong as the low profile. And in case you're gluing up something really big, like a hull for a wooden battleship, they make high profile strut up to 3 1/4 inches. You don't need that. Don't worry about it. So like I said, the dimensions are standard, which is great because lots of third-party vendors make accessories and specialized hardware for these. There are these magnetic washers and these spring nuts. And lots of other stuff. I'll leave links in the description for some of those. This is one of those specialty accessories I use all the time. This is called a cone nut. See the little cone there? In the previous video, I used carriage bolts to clamp the struts together, and that's fine. But these cone nuts offer a lot more flexibility. They allow us to swap out a long carriage bolt for a shorter hex bolt, which we can then place anywhere along the length of the strut we want to. We're not just limited to where the slots happen to fall. And no more reaching underneath to hold the bolts in. I use 5-minute epoxy and leave these attached so I never lose them and they're always ready to go. These are only about $1 each, so it's a cheap and very worthwhile upgrade. Another awesome time saver are these handle nuts. These are faster and offer way more torque than the wing nuts I used to use and don't require any tools. I urge you to explore the possibilities and take a look at what's available. I'll leave links in the description for some good suppliers for you to check out. Now I'll admit, this extra hardware certainly looks cool, kind of MacGyverish really, but the problem is this can start to add quite a bit of extra cost. So I thought, is it possible to reduce the amount of hardware we're using on these, thereby reducing the cost? Then I thought, heck, what about getting rid of the hardware altogether? In a previous video, I showed how to integrate F-clamps like this into a glue-up by cutting slots into wooden cauls, and actually, you can apply the same principle here. With these F-clamps, there's a built-in stop that prevents you from separating the clamp, so you'll need to grind that off first. Then pull this clamping head off, push the bar up through one of these holes, replace the clamping head, and there you go. Keep in mind, they do make these with a longer throat depth, so if you want to apply pressure a bit further in toward the middle using that method, you can certainly do that. But you know, now that I think of it, there's actually an even better way to do this. A way that allows you to apply a lot more force, doesn't require you to modify anything, and uses something you probably already own. But first, let's take a walk. I want to talk to you about something. You want to go for a walk, buddy? Come on, let's go. These strut clamps I'm showing are a good example of a tool that can make your woodworking easier. But what about a tool that can make your life easier? Dealing with the stress of running a small woodworking business, making YouTube videos, and trying to be a good husband and father can get overwhelming. Juggling demands from clients, family obligations, relationships, deadlines, it's just a lot. And in life, like in woodworking, having the right tools can make all the difference. And that's where BetterHelp, the sponsor of this video, comes in. When you're juggling so many responsibilities, it can be challenging to find time for self-care, let alone schedule in-person therapy sessions. BetterHelp offers a solution that could fit seamlessly into your life. BetterHelp connects you with a licensed therapist who is trained to listen and to give you helpful, unbiased advice. First, you go to their site and answer a few questions. BetterHelp will match you to a professional who has years of experience helping people with struggles just like yours. You can do it all from your phone or computer, via phone call, video chat, or messaging, whatever feels most comfortable. It's the easiest possible way to start seeing a therapist. Let BetterHelp connect you to a therapist who can support you, all from the comfort of your own home. Visit betterhelp.com/BustedKnuckleWoodworks or choose Busted Knuckle Woodworks during sign-up and enjoy a special discount on your first month. Time to get back to the shop. Eddie! Here I've got a couple of those squeeze clamps. Everybody has a bunch of these hanging around. And the beauty of these is that the end pops right off. Check that out. Huh? And these come in several different sizes depending on your needs. That's probably too small. And with this method, you don't need to buy any hardware at all. In fact, I'm going to declare this the budget winner of the entire video. Another controversial topic from the previous video was the way I placed these. Many people question whether placing the strut with the open side facing the work could somehow damage the panel. And I will tell you, after using these on many projects with all kinds of woods, from pine to poplar to oak to hickory, you name it, I've never had that problem. You would have to crank down on these really hard to dent your work. Way harder than you probably need to. But you know, that said, there's no rule that says you can't flip these over. In fact, there aren't any rules. Do what you want. Go nuts. The main problem with doing this, though, is that regular washers or even fender washers don't provide much support here. And those magnetic washers I showed earlier, they just spin around. For this, you need a no-spin washer. These have ribs on the side that fit down into the channel and prevent it from turning, and they offer very robust support across the entire opening. And voila, as the French say. Another thing my viewers seem to worry about quite a bit is the tendency for some cauls to bow up in the middle when downward clamping pressure is applied to the ends, and therefore fail to apply the necessary pressure here in the middle. Now, that can be an issue with wooden cauls, so to compensate for that, wooden cauls are usually built with a slight taper that can counteract the amount of expected flex. But honestly, that just isn't a problem with these, I assure you. And if you do somehow manage to bend these, you might want to submit a resume to the Avengers. But I know there are some of you who are still going to worry about it, so be cool. I got you. What you can do is strap another pair of struts straight across. Having them perpendicular like this allows you to apply a ludicrous amount of force to these and never, ever worry about flexing. And remember, because the struts aren't captured to each other like the store-bought steel cauls, you can use long bolts or threaded rod to make these as far apart as you need to. Let's see the Rockler guys try that. As you know, one of the most important characteristics of an effective caul is one that doesn't stick to your panel. And they do make these in many glue-resistant materials, like galvanized, powder-coated, stainless, even PVC-coated. I use these zinc-plated struts. They're the easiest to find, and they're glue-resistant just the way they are. And I used to coat them with paste wax to make them even more so. But wax is pretty messy, and smelly, and expensive. So what I do now is add some UHMW tape. UHMW, in case you're interested, stands for ultra high molecular weight. Wait, that's not right. Ultra high molecular weight. And I just add some right to the edges here. This stuff is easy to apply, very glue resistant, and won't make you smell like a petroleum refinery. This stuff is only about 20 cents a foot, so pretty cheap. These strut channel cauls have so many advantages over the store-bought kind. For example, these Rockler panel clamps only allow panels from 10 to 36 inches wide and from 3/4 up to 3 inches thick. These don't have those restrictions. You can go as thick or thin or narrow or wide as you want. And with threaded rod and availability up to 10 feet in length, you can do really massive glue ups. But there is one big drawback that many of you pointed out, and rightly so. The commercial ones apply clamping pressure in both directions, both vertically and horizontally, whereas these only apply clamping force in one direction, this way, which means you still need pipe clamps to squeeze the boards together. So let's fix that. The idea is to integrate horizontal clamping pressure to eliminate the need for pipe clamps, which would definitely make these quicker to deploy, more convenient, and hopefully cheaper. The first idea, though not the slickest, is definitely the simplest, and that is to just wedge these boards together. I made these hardwood wedges out of some scrap oak, 8 inches long, 3 inches tall. So to do this, you want to place a straight piece of scrap between the rear bolts and the panel to protect it. Then set up the front bolts about 1 inch or 2 from the panel. There's a lot of holes here, so that's pretty easy to do. Get these snug, not fully tightened down yet, just snug. Then place your wedges in here. Give it a smack or two. Tighten the bolts some more. Another couple of smacks for good luck. And you're done. And this definitely works, but it's a little bit difficult to finesse, and besides, it's not cool, you know? So I went back to the drawing board and tried to see if I could Frankenstein a more traditional clamp to work. I bought pretty much every clamp I could find in my local area and started cutting and drilling and failing. I discovered one of the biggest challenges for a 3/4 inch panel is it's tricky to find something that will fit in this small gap. So I eventually came up with this. This is a simple C-clamp, like you can get from almost anywhere. These are mechanically very simple, very robust, and very cheap. I like this one because it has a quick release mechanism. Not really sure how well that will hold up over time, but easy enough to replace. First, I take a small block of hardwood scrap and use a Forstner bit to drill a recess in the middle. Then I use some 5-minute epoxy to attach it to the swivel end right here. That will help protect the panel. Once that sets, I drill a 1/2 inch hole here right at the elbow, and another here 2 inches up from that. Then cut it off right here. When you're done, you should have something like this. So now set up 2 bolts on the front side. Then put the clamp on here, like so. You can see where I'm going with this, right? Turn the handle, and there you go. And the beauty of this is that you have plenty of clearance, even for a 3/4 inch glue up, because this clamp is only about 1/2 inch thick. And if you happen to be doing a thicker glue up for, say, like a tabletop or something, you can get really creative with this idea. I tried F-clamps and squeeze clamps. And if you wanted, you could even try something like these ratchet clamps or even a bench dog clamp. But the general idea is the same. And no galvanized pipe anywhere in sight. Pretty cool, right? Solutions don't have to be over-engineered or overpriced or come in fancy colors, because very often the best solution isn't one you'll find in a store. And speaking of things you won't find in a store,